I stood frozen, my hand still gripping the note they left with the rocking chair. Its message clear. We're downsizing you. Kelsey's voice echoed in my head. Too sweet, too rehearsed, as she tried to explain it all away. Christmas had always been about family, but now it felt like the final nail in the coffin of a relationship I never saw coming. My own son and daughter-in-law, ready to pack me up and ship me out, as if I wasn't even part of their lives anymore. Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The chair was wrapped in red cellophane like it was supposed to be a joke, or maybe a prize. I wasn't sure which stung more. It rocked slightly as I walked closer, like it had been nudged, deliberately positioned under the Christmas tree, just off-center from the rest of the gift. A little white envelope sat taped to one of the armrests, my name written in Kelsey's slanted cursive. "Merry Christmas, Mom," she said brightly. Too brightly, like a TV anchor tossing to commercial. We thought this would be a thoughtful touch. Piper stood off to the side in her mismatched socks, arms crossed over her new unicorn pajama set. Her eyes were already shining, not with excitement, but something else. Ben hovered in the kitchen doorway, coffee mug shaking slightly as he lifted it. He didn't make eye contact. I reached for the envelope slowly, my fingers stiff from the cold morning air seeping in through the glass door. Opened it, read it. As our family grows and needs change, we're prioritizing safety and space. Effective January 5th, we'll be converting the ADU into a home office. Please begin transitioning your belonging. With love, Kelsey and Ben. I read it twice, not because I didn't understand, but because I didn't trust myself to speak after just once. A rocking chair and a downsizing notice, wrapped in Christmas paper. "Well?" Kelsey asked, tucking a strand of glossy hair behind her ear. "We wanted to talk to you earlier, but the holidays are so chaotic, you know?" I nodded, or something like a nod. "It's really about you," she continued, with that faux compassionate lilt that always made me feel like a patient, not a person. "You've been so independent, but with winter coming, it's just, well, that little unit gets chilly, and Ben needs a space to decompress. Work from home is permanent now, remember?" Still I said nothing. Not yet. My fingers traced the wood grain of the chair. Oak, probably. Nice enough. Rocking, but not gliding. Firm arms. "It was Ben's idea," Kelsey added quickly, glancing over her shoulder. Ben flinched. "Mom, I cut him off with a smile I didn't feel. "I understand," I said gently. My voice came out smooth, practiced, like the way I used to ask passengers if they preferred chicken or pasta. Piper's lower lip trembled. She took a small step toward me, then hesitated when Kelsey shot her a glance. "I'm glad you're taking this so well," Kelsey said, kneeling to pick up wrapping paper, her diamond studs catching the morning light. "It's just, we all have to make adjustments sometime." Behind her, on the kitchen counter, sat a thick packet labeled Refinance Agreement, bright red stamp across the front. Closing, January 5th. My stomach knotted. That wasn't just an office remodel, that was a full restructure. They were making this permanent, legal. "I'll get started packing," I said lightly, folding the note and slipping it into my cardigan pocket. "No use putting things off." Kelsey blinked. She hadn't expected compliance, at least, not this quickly. Piper slipped something into my hand as she brushed past me on her way to the tree. A crayon-scrawled note, folded 6 times into a clumsy square. I opened it carefully. "Grandma's room forever." I swallowed hard. Outside, Alma Ruiz's silhouette appeared in her living room window across the street, shoulders stiff, hand on her mug like it was the only thing anchoring her. She had a perfect view of the scene unfolding through our open blinds. She knew. Back inside, Ben cleared his throat. "Let's open gifts," he offered. Too late. Too hollow. I lowered myself into the rocking chair. It creaked under me, not loudly, but enough. Kelsey handed me a box wrapped in gold foil. I didn't open it. Instead, I looked toward the window, toward Alma, and nodded once. Not in greeting, in signal. I woke to the sound of tape ripping, not the delicate kind you use for wrapping paper. The thick, industrial kind, meant for sealing things shut. Mover's tape. One long drag across cardboard followed by another, then footsteps. Heavy. Male. Not Ben. I sat up in bed, but it wasn't mine anymore. The mattress had been stripped, the quilt folded at the foot like a hotel checkout. My slippers were missing. I found them 2 feet away under a labeled box. Donate. The air inside the ADU felt thinner than usual, like something essential had already been pulled from it. In the hallway, a man in a branded hoodie was measuring the door frame. He gave me a polite smile, the kind reserved for tenants in transition. "We'll be careful with the larger pieces, ma'am." I didn't respond, just nodded again. That seemed to be my role lately. Nodding woman in corner. More boxes lined the hallway. Trash. Donate. Office storage. Not a single one labeled keep. Voices drifted in from the main house. Kelsey's laugh. Too loud for morning. "No, babe, it'll be sleek." I saw a YouTube walkthrough of a home office conversion, and it was basically studio quality. Think about your calls with corporate. No more toddler screams in the background. Ben murmured something I couldn't hear. I imagined his shoulders were slumped, mug in hand again, brow furrowed like he was the one being displaced. I opened the small top drawer of my desk. It still smelled faintly like cedar. Inside was my file box. Nothing large, just the essentials: passport, birth certificate, flight attendant union letters, a few photos from a simpler time. I clicked the latch shut and rested my hand on the lid. I didn't take the jewelry box, or the scarves, or the antique perfume tray I'd picked up in Charleston the summer after my husband died. Let them decide what those things were worth. I heard a soft shuffle at the doorway. Piper stood there in a purple hoodie that swallowed her frame. Her hair was tangled, cheeks puffy from sleep. She held something behind her back. "What's that?" I asked gently. She looked over her shoulder, then stepped into the room like it might vanish behind her. "It's just for you." She handed me another crayon note, this one on lined notebook paper. Edges curled like it had been folded and refolded. In big block letters, "Grandma's room forever. Not giving up." My throat tightened. I smiled so she wouldn't see the ache behind my ribs. "This one's even better than the Christmas one." She shrugged. "I drew a lock on it this time," she said, pointing to a tiny sketch of a padlock in the corner, "so nobody can take it." "Very smart," I whispered. Behind her, Kelsey's voice cut in sharply. "Piper! Honey, come help me with the wrapping paper from yesterday. I need your eyes." Piper looked at me. I gave her the same nod I'd given Alma. Quiet, strategic. Go. After she left, I sat down on the stripped mattress, still holding the note. Ben appeared a few minutes later, alone. He lingered in the hallway, his eyes sweeping the room like a man surveying a crime scene he couldn't undo. "It's for the best, Mom," he said finally, not looking at me. "The market's changing. We need to be smart." I didn't answer. I stood, lifted the file box, and walked past him like we were strangers on a train. Not rude, not warm, just separate. Kelsey breezed into view as I reached the front door. Her phone was against her ear, voice upbeat. "Yes. Estate sale, exactly." "Oh, she's completely cooperative. Next Thursday works. I'll send you photos of the larger items." She turned, startled to see me behind her. "Just confirming the consult," she said, voice sugary. "We want to make sure your antiques go to good homes." I smiled tightly. "That's thoughtful." "Oh, and we'll need the ADU cleared by the 3rd so we can repaint before Ben's start date. You're okay with that?" I said nothing. From the window, I caught a glimpse of Alma again, still watching. I took Piper's note, refolded it carefully, and slid it into the binder in my file box, right behind my passport. Alma Ruiz never rang the doorbell. She just knocked twice, short, clipped, then let herself in like she had for the past 20 years. Except this time, she didn't bring banana bread or a casserole. She brought law. We sat at the kitchen table in my ADU, now stripped to its bones. The walls looked naked without the painting. I hadn't realized how much warmth came from things you can't pack in bubble wrap. Alma pulled a battered 3-ring binder from her tote and thumped it on the table like it weighed more than the past week. "Tell me you didn't throw out the green envelope," she said without preamble. I opened the file box beside me, flipped to the back, and slid it across. She nodded approvingly. "Good. Most people toss it with the closing document. Or worse, they never read it." The binder pages were color-coded with tabs, legal forms, public notices, permit receipts, and one item I had only half understood when I first read it: Elder Occupant Protective Covenant, signed 2017. 10-year occupancy clause, Alma said, tapping it with a freshly manicured nail. Filed at the county recorder's office. Names you as a retained resident with uninterrupted access and peaceful use of the premises until July 2027. You waived nothing. They can't remove you without violating the covenant. I blinked. But they own the house. She lifted one eyebrow. They own the house. You own your rights. That document's enforceable. It wasn't just for show. I stared at the words again. Legal. Emotionless. Surgical. Still binding. They'd need to dissolve the covenant through a petition and hearing. That takes months. Judges don't like it. And if they forged anything. She didn't finish that sentence. She didn't have to. I felt something I hadn't in days. Gravity in my bones. A center. Call the recorder, I said. Alma already had her phone out. On it. She put the call on speaker. A young woman answered, voice chipper. King County Recorder's Office. Hi there. This is Alma Ruiz, permit clerk retired. ID number R3149-72. I'm confirming a filed elder occupant protective covenant, parcel ID 08452-B. A few keystrokes clicked in the background. Yes, ma'am, we have it on record. Filed July 10th, 2017. Active. Not amended or voided. Perfect, Alma said, locking eyes with me. Thank you. When she hung up, she sat back like a general reviewing the first flank of a battlefield. You're not a guest here, she said, softer now. You're a legal occupant. They can't convert the unit or refinance anything that affects your use without written, notarized consent. Which, I assume, you didn't give. I swallowed. No, I didn't. The humiliation from Christmas morning lingered like a hangover, but something else settled in behind it now. Not rage, not sadness, something colder, sharper. Resolve. I flipped the binder shut with both hands. Then I'm not going anywhere. Alma smiled, but it wasn't smug. It was proud. My phone buzzed beside the binder. FaceTime. Piper. I answered quickly and angled the screen so Kelsey wouldn't catch a glimpse of Alma. Piper's face filled the frame. Cheeks flushed, hair pulled back into a rushed ponytail. Grandma, she whispered. I have to be quiet. Mom's boxing your dresser. I closed my eyes for a second, then met her gaze. Which one? The big one. With the mirror you always let me pretend was magic. I didn't flinch. Where is she putting it? In the garage. But she labeled it staging. That's what she said. I think she's taking pictures behind Piper. The hallway lights flickered. Kelsey's voice echoed faintly. Piper, where'd you go? I gotta go, she whispered. Don't worry. I drew another lock. The screen went black. I looked at Alma. She's not just boxing furniture. She's boxing me out. Alma slid the binder closer to me. Then it's time to unbox everything. Michael Harris's office smelled like lemon oil and caution. I sat across from his desk, the binder clutched in my lap like a life preserver. Alma sat beside me, hands folded, her posture as straight as if she were back behind the city permit counter. Harris skimmed the documents in steady silence, his brow twitching occasionally. He wore square tortoiseshell glasses and a wedding ring so polished it caught the light when he turned a page. When he reached the covenant, he paused. Well, he said finally, that explains their urgency. He leaned back in his chair. This is valid. Enforceable. Your rights aren't just implied. They're guaranteed. I nodded once, keeping my mouth still. It was easier than trusting it to move. But he reached into a side drawer and pulled out a thin file folder, already open. This is where it gets murky. He slid the document across the desk. The paper looked official. County logo, notarized stamp, dated 6 weeks ago. A quitclaim deed, filed under my name, signed by me, transferring all interest in the property to Benjamin Hale and Kelsey Hale. Except I'd never seen it before. I didn't pick it up. I couldn't. That's not mine, I said, barely above a whisper. I didn't sign that. Harris didn't flinch. I believe you. Alma leaned forward. You're telling me she's already been removed from the title? Harris nodded. Technically, yes. If this document were legitimate, he turned the paper toward himself, tapped the signature line. But here's the problem. This isn't how you sign your name. I looked at him. You always write your middle initial. On everything. Your medical forms, your voter registration, even your library card application. He opened another drawer and pulled out a side-by-side copy, my signature from the original property covenant, next to the forged one. Here, it's missing. Alma grunted softly, half amused. Amateurs? Harris stood and walked to the copier near the door. He made 2 quick scans, then dropped the document into a thick envelope marked Fraud Review. Urgent. I'm drafting a fraud affidavit, he said as he moved. I'll also file an immediate alert with the county title office and flag your identity with the assessor. If they try to sell or refinance before this is resolved, it'll trigger a fraud hold. Alma nodded slowly. So we have time. No, Harris said. We have a fuse. And it's burning. He sat again, folding his hands. This isn't just about the covenant. If they went as far as to forge your name, they may have moved money. Or planned to. Do you have any financial activity linked to the house? Equity lines? Disbursements? Not that I know of, I said, though my heart was beating in places I didn't know it could. I'll start the paper trail. But I'm going to be blunt, Mrs. Hale. You're not dealing with carelessness. You're dealing with intent. And they're counting on you folding. I'm not folding, I said, sharper than I meant to. Alma smirked. Told you. Harris turned toward me, his tone quieter now. Do you remember the notary who supposedly witnessed the deed? I shook my head. I'll subpoena their logbook next. I stared down at the forged document again. The signature was neat, rounded, uncertain. A stranger's hand pretending to be mine. They tried to move you with ink, Alma said beside me. No, Harris corrected, his eyes fixed on mine. They tried to erase you. And this, he tapped the covenant again, is your undo button. I didn't cry. I just nodded. I was getting good at that. As we stood to leave, Harris held out the envelope he'd prepared. Hold on to this. And Nora, don't let them see it coming. It took Harris 3 days to trace the LLC. He called on a Thursday morning, his voice taut and flat, like a violin string tuned too tight. Come in. Bring Alma. When we arrived, he was standing by the window, holding a printed spreadsheet in one hand and a mug in the other, untouched. The blinds were tilted just enough to keep out the sun, but not the pressure. It's worse than we thought, he said. He motioned us toward the desk where a folder lay open like an autopsy report. The second lien on the property, he said, filed under a company called Dovetail West LLC. Sound familiar? Alma shook her head. I didn't speak. It should, he said, because it's owned by Kelsey's boutique partner. On paper, it looks like a business loan for expansion, but in reality, it's secured against the ADU. Specifically, your portion of the property's equity. My chest tightened. How much? $325,000, taken out in July. Days after Ben refinanced under the forged deed, Alma whistled under her breath. She used my equity, I said quietly. To float a boutique? Harris nodded. She masked it as capital for inventory and marketing. But the lien doc lists the collateral as the accessory structure and its associated land parcel. That's you, Nora. You were her credit card. I sat down slowly. The room was spinning in place, not fast, just enough to feel like nothing could be trusted. Not papers, not people. Alma broke the silence. Who signed the lien doc? Harris flipped the page. Kelsey Hale. Sole authorization. Ben didn't sign. He's listed as a beneficiary, not an originator. I blinked. She didn't even need his approval. If she had controlling ownership through the forged quitclaim, no. She didn't need anyone. But here's the bigger problem. He pulled up a screen and pointed to a set of red numbers. The boutique is bleeding. Fast. Rent delinquent. Payroll bounced twice in August. One vendor's already sued in small claims. Alma exhaled hard. She leveraged Nora's home to patch a sinking ship. And the hole just keeps getting wider, Harris said. The boutique was a vanity project with a leased storefront and 6 figures of debt before the lien. This was her Hail Mary. So she buried me to save herself, I said. No, came a voice from the doorway. Ben. He looked thinner than the last time I'd seen him, less shaven, more human. He held a folder of his own, filled with receipts and bank statements. She said it would save us, he said, voice rough. She told me if we didn't act fast, we'd lose the house. That the equity in the ADU was just paper until we used it. I didn't know she'd forged your name. I swear I looked at him, really looked. He'd always been easy to steer. By charm, by crisis, by the pressure of being the middle of everyone else's needs. But now his guilt sat square on his shoulders, unhidden, and it didn't buy him a damn thing. You don't save family, I said, by erasing it. He dropped his gaze. I didn't think she'd go that far. She did, Harris said. And now we respond. He slid a form across the table. We're going to notify the lien holder that the covenant predates their agreement. It voids their right to enforce terms that interfere with the protected occupant. And if they fight it? Alma asked. Then we counter, Harris said. We challenge the title. We expose the fraud. We bring in the county auditor and escalate to Superior Court if needed. But first, we make noise. I stood, took the form, and signed. Alma's eyes lit up. You're going to fight them with their own paperwork. No, I said. I'm going to drown them in it. Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Piper. She's in your closet. Took your jewelry box. Should I hide it? I looked up slowly. She's still looting. Harris was already reaching for another file. Then we moved faster. The knock came at 9:13 a.m., sharp and official. I was already dressed. Hair brushed, binder open on the kitchen table. Not because I expected company, but because I knew the war was shifting fronts. Alma had texted the night before. City's sending someone tomorrow. Don't blink. I opened the door to find a man in his late 40s with steel gray temples and a clipboard so thick it looked weaponized. The gold city badge on his windbreaker read, O'Rourke, Code Enforcement. He adjusted his glasses and offered a tight nod. Mrs. Hale? I'm here regarding a complaint filed for unauthorized occupancy and illegal dwelling conversion. I didn't flinch. Come in. The ADU was clean, sparse. I'd made sure of it. No clutter, no boxes, no signs of transient, as Kelsey had accused in her earlier rants. O'Rourke stepped inside, took a slow 360-degree glance, then flipped to the second page of his packet. The complainant claims the accessory unit has been repurposed without permit. Specifically, that the structure no longer qualifies as a compliant residence. Also included is a request for enforcement action to vacate non-permitted usage. And what does your file say? I asked calmly, sliding the binder toward him across the counter. He opened it and began to scan. His finger paused on the tab labeled Covenant, EOPC, recorded. A minute passed, then another. When he finally looked up, it was with something just short of admiration. This is the cleanest residential covenant I've ever seen. Properly notarized, fully recorded. No gaps. He flipped through the permits, occupancy compliance letters, fire inspections, even my retirement status affidavit. All alphabetized and color-coded. Alma's handiwork. Well, Mrs. Hale, he said, tapping the binder closed. You're fully compliant. No code violations, no zoning infraction, and no legal basis for forced removal. I allowed myself the smallest smile. So the complaint's dismissed? He nodded. Effective immediately. I'll enter it in the system today. Kelsey's voice rang out from behind us, sharp and too loud. Excuse me? What? She was standing in the doorway between the ADU and the main house, manicured fingers gripping the frame like it was holding her back from lunging. Ben stood a few steps behind her, arms crossed, eyes cast low. O'Rourke turned to face her. Mrs. Hale? This is a mistake, she snapped. She was supposed to be out weeks ago. My husband needs that space for his job. He's remote full-time now. It's in the works already. O'Rourke raised one brow. Planning a conversion? Yes, into an office/guest suite, she said with a forced smile. Eventually Airbnb, maybe. We've got a contractor lined up. Well, he said coolly, then you should be aware. Converting a protected unit under a live occupancy covenant without rescission is a code violation, and listing it for short-term rental use under those conditions could trigger both civil penalties and a cease-use order. Kelsey paled. But we haven't done anything yet. Intent is enough to warrant monitoring, he said, closing his clipboard. I'll be checking in monthly. Ben still hadn't spoken. He looked like a kid who'd set off fireworks in a mailbox and was waiting for the siren. As O'Rourke stepped past her, he added, Mrs. Hale? Might be best to read your covenants next time before filing a complaint. Saves everyone the time. When the front door clicked shut behind him, silence flooded the room like a fog. Kelsey turned to me slowly. Her mouth opened, then shut again. I could see it behind her eyes. Rage, confusion, strategy. She didn't know which card to play next. I didn't give her the chance. Your boutique must be exhausting, I said softly, trying to manage inventory and a cover-up. She blinked once, then spun on her heel and disappeared down the hallway. Piper slipped in quietly from the backyard, her little hand wrapping around mine. Her grip was tight, warm. Did he say you get to stay? I nodded. Her shoulders slumped with relief. That night, I checked my email and found a message from Maple Crest. Subject line: Deposit cleared. Unit reserved for January move-in. I stared at it for a full minute. They were still pushing the next phase. Harris didn't ask how I was doing. He just slid the laptop across the desk like he was delivering a verdict. There, he said. Right there. November 16th, 11:42 p.m. Password reset initiated for your Maple Crest account. The IP address glowed on the screen. Residential. Local. He pointed to the location tab. Originated from inside this house. Specifically, your son's network. Ben sat beside me, visibly shrinking into his chair. His lips parted like he wanted to speak, but nothing came out. I could feel my pulse in my throat. Harris clicked again, pulling up the security log. Login attempt successful at 11:45 p.m. Accessed billing. Changed payment method. Submitted transfer authorization. Another click. Then confirmed wire of $30,000. My money? My deposit? My choice? Stolen. Harris looked up gently. We already flagged the transaction. The facility's compliance office froze the contract this morning. Alma leaned back in her chair. So she rerouted the funds to pay for what exactly? A security deposit on the moon? Too early to say, Harris replied. We've requested bank cooperation, but the transfer was fast, clean, and tagged under EE. Family Trust Reimbursement Memo Line. I closed my eyes. I could see her, Kelsey, at the kitchen island after midnight. Makeup scrubbed off, phone in one hand, wine glass in the other. Clicking through screens she had no right to touch. Siphoning my life through a monitor. Just another task before bed. Alma placed a warm hand on my wrist. Proof is power, Nora. Don't forget that. But it didn't feel like power. It felt like grief. Grief with an invoice attached. Ben finally found his voice. I didn't know, he whispered. I swear to God, I didn't know she touched that account. Harris didn't answer. He didn't need to. She used Piper's name, I said. That's how she got in. My security question. First grandchild's middle name. Ben flinched like I'd struck him. I looked down at my hands in my lap. They weren't shaking. I was almost surprised. I thought this would break me, but it didn't. It just carved something out. She stole from you, Piper said quietly. We turned. She was standing in the doorway of Harris's office. Alma's scarf looped awkwardly around her shoulders like a child's idea of grown-up armor. No one had heard her come in. She stole from you, Grandma. I opened my mouth, then shut it. I couldn't give her a soft version of the truth. There wasn't one. Yes, I said. She did. Piper looked down, then up. She said it was a reallocation. She told me that word like I'd know what it meant. I blinked. She said that to you? She was on the phone. I was in the hall. Her voice was flat now, clinical. She said, it's not theft, it's a reallocation. That money was always going to end up back in the family. I inhaled through my nose, long and slow. I would not cry. Not here. Not now. Not where Kelsey could twist it into weakness. I'm fine, sweetheart, I said, pressing my palm against hers. Go wait in the car with Alma. Piper hesitated. I don't want you to be alone. I'm not, I said. I've got a lawyer and a record of every crime your mother just committed. She gave a tight nod and turned. Harris waited until the door shut behind her. I've contacted Maple Crest. Their legal counsel's already begun a fraud inquiry. They'll likely freeze all activity under your name and hers until a determination is made. Will they report it to law enforcement? That's up to you. Ben's voice was smaller now. She said she was fixing things. No, I said. She was rearranging the wreckage to hide the smoke. Harris pulled a new folder from his briefcase and handed it to me. We start from here. What they touched. What we can take back. I tucked it under my arm like a fire blanket. Back at the house, I passed the dining table without stopping. The rocking chair sat just beyond it, wrapped again in its cellophane like a reminder. I didn't touch it. Instead, I walked past the kitchen and opened the junk drawer. Found the old scissors with the blue handle. Then I walked into my room, and I cut the power cord to my internet router. The courtroom smelled like varnish and cold ambition. I sat at the petitioner's table beside Harris, a glass of water untouched in front of me. My binder, heavier now, rested like a shield across my lap. Across the aisle, Kelsey looked like a magazine ad for composed parenting. Hair ironed flat, neutral suit, pearl studs. Beside her, her attorney whispered something, and she nodded with a stage-managed smile. Ben sat 2 rows behind her, not part of the legal team. His suit jacket was wrinkled at the collar, hands fidgeting with the program from the courthouse directory, like he was trying to fold it small enough to disappear. The bailiff called. In re. Hale versus Hale. Petition to revoke residential rights and assign medical conservatorship. I straightened my spine. The nerve of it. She hadn't just tried to erase my name. Now she was trying to rewrite my mind. Judge Evelyn Carr entered briskly. Mid-60s, silver bun, black robe with zero tolerance sewn into every seam. This won't take long, she said, flipping the docket. Let's begin. Kelsey's lawyer rose first. Your Honor, we're here on behalf of my client, who believes the current occupant of the ADU is no longer mentally equipped to manage her own affairs. Mrs. Hale, Nora, is disoriented, resistant to change, and possibly experiencing early-stage cognitive decline. I felt Harris stiffen beside me. She's also hoarding, the attorney added. We have photographic evidence. They entered a printout packet into the record, 10 photos, each showing corners of my unit mid-packing, half-filled boxes, a laundry basket tipped sideways, a drawer left open. Staged chaos, Harris whispered to me. Kelsey leaned toward the microphone. I love my mother-in-law, she said sweetly. But she's been confused, paranoid. She thinks we're stealing from her. I didn't blink. Judge Carr's pen scratched once across her pad. And what medical evidence do you have? The lawyer gestured, and a man in a white coat stood from the rear. Dr. Chandler, geriatric neuropsychologist. The judge raised a brow. Retained by whom? Kelsey Hale, the attorney replied. The doctor cleared his throat. I have not personally evaluated Mrs. Hale. However, I was given access to selected footage from a Ring camera and several notes from the family indicating behavioral changes. Harris stood smoothly. Objection. Hearsay and unqualified basis sustained, Carr said, annoyed. Let's move on. Our turn. Harris rose and walked to the screen. Your Honor, what we do have are facts. Filed, time-stamped, notarized. He clicked a remote. The projector displayed the forged quitclaim deed. This document was filed 6 weeks ago, removing Nora Hale from the title. Her signature was forged, omitting her usual middle initial. We've submitted a fraud affidavit to the county recorder. Another click. Elder Occupant Covenant, highlighted. This document guarantees her right to reside, uninterrupted, until 2027. Filed in 2017. No amendments, no voiding, no consent from Mrs. Hale to override. He clicked once more. A copy of the Maple Crest transaction log, the IP address, the transfer authorization. The facility deposit was rerouted without her knowledge. The account was accessed from the Hale residence, using her granddaughter's name to answer the security question. Judge Carr's face was stone. And who submitted the facility paperwork? Kelsey Hale. Carr looked to Kelsey. Is that correct? I was helping manage her transition. She didn't request a transition. I was assisting her planning. She was overwhelmed. Carr's tone sharpened. Did she ask for your help? Kelsey hesitated. Not directly. Judge Carr leaned forward. Let me be absolutely clear. The court does not view independent women in their 60s as mentally diminished because they resist being boxed up and sold off. Silence. Petition denied, Carr said flatly. And I strongly advise Mrs. Hale, she pointed at Kelsey, to reconsider future filings unless she enjoys sanction. Kelsey's face didn't crumble. It calcified. Ben stood slowly, but the damage was already done. The entire courtroom had watched his wife weaponize his mother's independence. I didn't gloat. I didn't even glance at him. As we stood to leave, I could feel Kelsey's glare burning holes in the back of my coat. Outside, Alma was waiting on the courthouse steps with Piper. She tried to have you declared incompetent? Piper whispered, eyes wide. I touched her cheek. She failed. We sat around Alma's dining table, not as warriors this time, but as people counting seconds before detonation. Harris didn't sugarcoat it. If we want control of the lien, we buy the note, he said. That's the cleanest play. No litigation delays, no lender objections, no loopholes. He slid a stapled packet toward me. Dovetail West LLC is broke. Their debts are being bundled and offered to private buyers. The lien on the ADU is one of the few with real value because the structure is legally habitable. If we act fast, we can purchase the debt and reassign it under your trust. Alma leaned forward. And if we don't? They sell it to a third party, maybe even a collector. And if they want to enforce, even your covenant might not protect you without a long uphill fight. How long do we have? I asked. 10 days, Harris said. The file closes next Friday. I nodded slowly, though the ground beneath my feet already felt like it was disappearing. Alma pushed her tea aside. I might know someone. Retired credit union investor. She's bought distressed paper before. Doesn't mind a fast close. I'll make a call. I listened, but my eyes drifted to the small envelope I'd been carrying in my purse. The Paris envelope, still sealed, still stamped with a travel agent's logo from 4 years ago. 10 grand in saving, 3 in certificate, 7 tucked away in emergency stock sales. It wasn't enough for a full buyout, but it was close, and it was everything I had. I'll do it, I said softly. Alma looked up. Nora, I don't need Paris, I said. I need peace. And I'm not leaving my granddaughter with a front row seat to this family's collapse. The room went quiet. Ben arrived an hour later, hat in hand, literally. He took it off when he stepped into Alma's kitchen, then ran his palm over his scalp like that might erase the man he'd been 2 months ago. I heard about the lien, he said. Kelsey didn't tell me. I found the emails this morning. He pulled out a folded sheet from his coat. Harris opened it. An itemized list of debts, boutique expenses, bounced payroll, a hidden Amex card, a business line of credit Kelsey had opened in both their names. She buried me, Ben said. I didn't even know I was under until I was already 6 feet deep. Alma crossed her arms. And now? She's still spending. On appearances, she thinks if she looks like she's winning, she won't lose. Ben looked at me. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. But I'll sign whatever you need to keep her out of this house. If you buy the lien, do it in your name, not mine. I nodded once. I wasn't planning to share. Later that night, back in my ADU, I unsealed the Paris envelope with slow, deliberate fingers. The cash was crisp. The travel itinerary still folded inside. 3 nights in Montmartre. A river cruise on the Seine. I tucked the paper into the back of the binder, then picked up my phone. Wire the funds, I told Harris. Tonight, if possible. I want that lien assigned to my trust before the sun comes up. After I hung up, I walked to the kitchen and found Piper sitting at the table, colored markers scattered around her. She looked up, hopeful. Did we win something? I paused. Not yet. She nodded solemnly, then picked up a fresh piece of printer paper and began to draw. 10 minutes later, she taped the finished sign to the fridge. It read, in her biggest handwriting, "No moving grandma." She added a little red heart under the word, "No." I turned away so she wouldn't see my eyes glass over. The wire cleared at 8:42 a.m. Harris forwarded me the confirmation as soon as it hit. Lien transferred. Title company recorded it under Hale Trust. Sole trustee, Nora D. Hale. The words didn't feel like victory. They felt like ballast. Like the ground had stopped shifting beneath me, but at the cost of something I'd spent years saving to escape it. Paris was gone. But for the first time in months, I was untouchable. I sat at Alma's table again, this time alone with Harris. The rain was soft outside, just enough to coat the window, not enough to drown out the silence in the room. He looked up from the folder. You're now the note holder on the debt secured by your own unit. And that means? He leaned forward. You're both the tenant and the lender. Anyone who tries to refinance, restructure, or repurpose that equity answers to you. You own the note they leveraged. You control its enforcement. I nodded slowly. I've gone from being a problem to being the bank. He smiled, but only with half his face. Exactly. He slid the folder back toward me. That ADU is locked. Legally, financially, tactically. No one can touch it unless you default. And we both know that's not happening. Ben stepped through the door just then. He looked tired, more honest that way. His shirt was untucked, and he'd brought 2 coffees, but he didn't offer one. He looked at me, and for the first time in a long while, he looked like my son. Not Kelsey's husband, not Piper's father, just the boy who used to bring me dandelions and a sweaty fist after t-ball. I heard it's done, he said. You bought the lien. I nodded once. He stood there for a second too long, then softly added, thank you. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He nodded to himself, took a sip of his own coffee, and walked back out into the rain. Later that afternoon, Piper came by with a folded piece of construction paper and green marker smudged on her fingers. I made something, she said shyly. She opened it slowly like she was unveiling a secret. Inside was a drawing of me sitting in the rocking, only this time, it wasn't wrapped in cellophane or buried in gilt. It was glowing, gold sunbeams around it, like something sacred. I was smiling, Piper on one side, a cat on the other. We didn't have a cat, but it didn't matter. I didn't know what color the chair really is, she said, so I made it rainbow. I traced my finger over the lines. It's perfect. Are you still leaving? She asked. I shook my head. No, I think I'm going to stay right here. She smiled, wide and real. Good. I tucked the drawing into the front pocket of my binder, between the covenant and the fraud affidavit. It deserved to be part of the official record. Later that night, I sat on the edge of my bed, binder resting in my lap, the folder from Harris beside me. I flipped through the pages slowly. There was no magic left in the numbers, just cold, hard entries. But each one now ended with a name that wasn't hers, mine. For the first time since Christmas morning, I wasn't waiting for something to be taken. I closed the binder. Not with anger, not with pride, with finality. I turned off the lamp and slipped under the quilt. From across the hallway, I heard Kelsey's voice. Sharp, low, panicked. Not shouting. Not yet. But I knew that sound. That was the sound of someone realizing the exits were gone. Ben responded softly. I couldn't make out the words, but I didn't need to. Because this time, the walls weren't closing in on me. They were closing in on her. Eviction court felt colder than the conservatorship hearing. Same courthouse, same judge. But this time, the seats were packed. Noisy clusters of landlords, tenants, city attorneys, all orbiting their own quiet collapses. I sat with Harris at the front, binder in my lap. My name sharp on the cover now, black ink across the front. Hale Trust, lineholder file. Kelsey swept in like she owned the floor. Heels sharp, suit tighter this time, no pearls. She'd upgraded to gold hoops and a leather folder. Her lawyer greeted the clerk with a too-wide grin. Ben followed a step behind them, subdued but present. He didn't sit on either side. All rise, the bailiff called. Judge Evelyn Carr re-entered the courtroom. Same no-nonsense bun, same weary eyes. She glanced over the docket, barely concealing her fatigue. Eviction filing from Kelsey Hale, represented by Mr. Darnell, she read. Respondent, Nora D. Hale. Defense by counsel Michael Harris. She looked up. Grounds for eviction? Kelsey's attorney stood. Your Honor, the plaintiff is seeking legal permission to reclaim use of the accessory dwelling unit located on their property. The family has undergone significant financial hardship. The unit is urgently needed for work-from-home accommodation and to house potential renters to stabilize household income. Judge Carr looked bored already. You've presented this before, haven't you? Not in this form, Your Honor. The petitioner is now pursuing through landlord-tenant channels, not probate. Carr glanced at Kelsey. So now, she's a tenant? Yes, Your Honor, her lawyer replied quickly. An at-will occupant with no current lease. Harris stood without waiting to be prompted. That's inaccurate. He opened the binder with the precision of a closing surgeon. Mrs. Hale is not an at-will tenant. She is the recorded covenant-protected occupant under a binding elder occupant protective covenant, filed, notarized, and on record since 2017. Further, she is now the secured creditor on the property's second lien. Assigned legally and independently under the Hale Trust, he placed two documents in front of the judge, one stamped from the title office, the other from the lien assignment transfer. Plaintiff's family leveraged this lien through Dovetail West LLC. Mrs. Hale purchased that debt in full. She is now the legal holder of the note. Carr leaned back. So, the eviction claimant is attempting to remove the protected resident who holds a binding interest in the property's financial structure? That's correct. Carr turned slowly toward Kelsey. Did you know this lien was assigned to your mother-in-law? Kelsey stiffened. I didn't think it would affect occupants. Carr arched an eyebrow. You didn't think evicting the secured creditor from her protected space would affect occupancy? Kelsey's voice cracked. We just need the room. That room is no longer yours to take, Carr said sharply. The eviction petition is dismissed. Immediate sanctions issued for the misuse of judicial time and for attempting to circumvent a valid covenant Kelsey's lawyer tried to recover. Your Honor, we acted in good faith. No, Mr. Darnell, Carr snapped. You acted in desperation, which, while understandable, is not a legal basis for erasing someone's rights. She turned her full gaze toward Kelsey. You don't get to steal from someone, forge their signature, raid their finances, file false complaints, and then play the victim when they outmaneuver you. Kelsey blinked. For the first time in months, she didn't speak. Carr banged the gavel. Case closed. Get out of my courtroom. We stood slowly. Harris turned to me. She's out of moves. No, I said. She's just out of paper. We walked down the courthouse steps in silence. The air was crisp, clear. Autumn had finally pushed through the gray. Piper was waiting by the planter, feet swinging from the bench. When she saw me, she stood and walked over. Did we win? She asked, barely a whisper. I crouched so we were eye level. No, I said, brushing her hair back. We stayed. She nodded solemnly, then leaned in and whispered. She looked scared. I didn't respond. We turned together, hand in hand, and walked toward the car. The boutique's awning came down the following Tuesday. It didn't make the local news. Bellevue didn't air its dirty laundry like that. But a quiet notice on the door said it. All. Lease terminated. Unit to be repossessed. Inside, mannequins stood stripped and abandoned. The register was gone. So was the pride. By Friday, Harris confirmed that 2 vendors had filed lawsuits for unpaid invoices. A third tagged the storefront on social media. Another one bites the dust. Pay your people next time, at Kelsey Hale Design. Ben came to me late Saturday afternoon. No blazer, no folder. Just him, finally. I want out, he said. We were in the ADU, the same kitchen where I'd once served Piper microwaved mac and cheese, while pretending my world wasn't dissolving behind her. Ben stood with his hands tucked under his arms like a boy in trouble. I didn't know about half the accounts, he said. And the ones I did know about, I didn't ask the right question. I let her spin it. All of it I didn't interrupt. He needed to say it out loud. She told me we'd bounce back. That boutique traffic would go up after Christmas. That refinancing the ADU was just temporary, just a bridge until the spring line came in. He laughed once, bitter and hollow. Turns out she was crossing a bridge that didn't exist. He looked at me. I want to stay here. But not as what I was. Not as her echo. I nodded. Then we'll put boundaries in writing. That night, Harris joined us at the dining table. The real one, inside the main house. No one said it, but it felt like a line had been crossed. Kelsey was gone for the weekend, visiting her sister, though we all knew she was licking her wounds somewhere she didn't have to see Piper's face. Harris laid out the proposal in plain English. Kelsey will sign a quitclaim deed relinquishing her interest in the house. In exchange, we drop pursuit of further civil damages. Nora's trust will assume majority equity, with Ben listed as a conditional co-owner. Ben swallowed hard. Conditions? Harris smiled without softness. Financial counseling. No new lines of credit without trustee sign-off. Quarterly account disclosures. Ben didn't flinch. Deal. I signed my part with a pen that had lived in my purse for 2 decades. It felt heavier than usual. Maybe because it was real. Maybe because I knew I wasn't signing something away. I was signing something into place. We filed the paperwork the next morning. The silence that followed wasn't peace, exactly, but it was a version of it, quieter, less dangerous. Kelsey returned on Monday and said nothing. No apologies, no screaming, just a glance at the new seating arrangement, my chair back at the kitchen table, and a purse hung on the hook by the door, not left on the counter like a claim. We didn't speak, but the hierarchy had shifted, and everyone knew it. That evening, Piper and I sat on the porch. The air was cool, and she had a blanket draped around her shoulders like a cape. I rocked slowly beside her, the old chair creaking under my hips in steady rhythm. She turned toward me, serious. Are you safe now, Grandma? I looked out at the street, at the houses with their trimmed hedges and freshly painted shutters. I thought about all the places that had nearly taken me. Courts, contracts, paper traps dressed like family decisions. And I thought about the name on the deed, the trust, the covenant. I nodded. I'm safe. She leaned her head on my shoulder. And I'm home. Thanksgiving smelled like cinnamon and honesty. The kitchen was louder than it had been in months. Alma humming as she carved her famous cranberry tart. Harris arguing with Piper about whether marshmallows belonged on sweet potatoes. They did, apparently. And Ben at the stove, sweating quietly over a dry brine turkey he'd triple-checked with YouTube. It was messy, uneven, real, and every inch of it felt earned. The dining table had been extended with the leaf insert, a tablecloth ironed but slightly wrinkled draped across it. Nora's old wine glasses sparkled in the afternoon sun. The silverware didn't match. The centerpiece was a mix of pine cones and one plastic turkey Piper had painted in kindergarten. There were 5 chairs. At the head of the table sat mine. Not left empty, not ignored, not staged. Mine. Ben had put my name on a place card, folded cardstock, crooked handwriting. Nora. No title, no suffix, just the person. "Dinner in 15, he called, wiping his hands on a dish towel and looking far more exhausted than a man who'd just roasted a 14-pound turkey ought to. Alma poured the wine. "This might be the first Thanksgiving I've seen a grown man sweat over food instead of finance." Ben chuckled weakly. "Turns out gravy's harder to fix than a mortgage." Piper darted past them and took her place beside my chair without asking. She wore a red velvet dress and tennis shoes. She had made a new seating chart, crayon-colored, tape laminated, taped to the wall beside the kitchen entrance. Each name was spelled out in bubble letters. Alma, Harris, Ben, Grandma, me. No Kelsey, not even as a mistake. Her chair, the one she used to plant herself in, phone in one hand and complaints in the other, was folded and leaning against the far wall. No one had touched it, not out of spite, just because. Harris took his seat opposite Alma. "Before we eat, I'd like to propose a toast." He lifted his glass toward me. "To the quiet revolutions, the ones made not with shouting, but with staying, holding." Outlasting Alma raised hers too. "To the women who read the fine print." Everyone laughed softly, but it settled into something warmer than humor. Piper lifted her water glass. "To the people who didn't leave." Ben hesitated, then lifted his last. "To the ones who came back." We clinked. The turkey was dry. The mashed potatoes were lumpy. The stuffing had too much sage, but no one cared. Not this year. I looked around the table, and for a moment, just one, everything slowed. I saw what could have been lost. The room, the house, the granddaughter beside me, the son trying to become someone new, the chair that held me steady. I wasn't in exile anymore. I was in command. Later, after pie and decaf and too much whipped cream, Piper tugged at my hand. "Want to see something?" she whispered. She led me back into the living room and pointed to a small shoebox tucked beneath the hutch. Inside were old menus, fabric scraps, bits of cardboard she'd turned into pretend invitations. She pulled out a tiny card with crooked letters. "Grandma, always head of table." I smiled down at her, heart aching in the best way. "I made it in January," she said. "When they said you were leaving, I wanted to remember." She placed it carefully on the mantel beside the old paper crane I'd folded from the downsizing letter, the one I couldn't bring myself to throw away. 2 artifacts, one from the war, one from the child who refused to believe it was over. I tucked the card upright, beside the crane, and ran a finger along the edge. Kelsey's voice never came up that night, not once. Her absence wasn't loud, it was accepted. Sometimes victory doesn't arrive with applause. Sometimes it arrives as a seat. It arrived the Monday after Thanksgiving, not in a courier's hand or a lawyer's briefcase, just slid through the mail slot quiet as breath. A manila envelope, sealed with clear tape. No return address, no stickers, just one word in blue ink on the front. Nora. I didn't open it right away. I stared at it for several minutes on the counter, beside the half-empty coffee pot and Piper's abandoned sketchbook. Then I took it to the dining table, the same table where she'd once planned my removal like a brunch menu, and opened it under full light. Inside, receipts, statements, 2 voided checks from joint accounts I hadn't known existed, and one sheet of lined notebook paper, torn from a spiral, edges ragged. The handwriting was hers. "Nora, there's no version of this that fixes anything. I was wrong. I let fear speak louder than decency. I thought if I could control the narrative, I could control the outcome. But control isn't the same as care. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking to be understood. This is everything I touched. Every transaction, every lie. I know I'm not welcome at the table. I just didn't want to leave without telling you the truth. Kelsey." It wasn't long. It wasn't eloquent, but it was real. I placed the letter flat on the table and smoothed the edges with my palm. My hand didn't tremble. Not anymore. A knock came 10 minutes later. Soft, rhythmic. Kelsey stood on the front porch with no makeup, no folder, no performance. Just jeans, a sweater, and the face of someone who'd seen their own undoing too many times in 1 year. "I didn't come to ask for anything," she said. "I just wanted to know you read it." "I did." A pause. The air smelled like wet leaves and the early hush of December. "I was awful to you," she said. I didn't argue. I thought, if I could just fix things fast enough, no one would notice the damage. She exhaled hard, but it was already done. Another pause. "You love Piper," I said finally. More than any defense that caught her. Her eyes flickered. "With everything I have," she whispered. "Then you'll accept visitation, not control. You'll come as her mother, not my proxy. And not one step further than the welcome mat without an invitation." She nodded. "No tricks," I said. "No paperwork. No explanation. If she asks questions, you answer them with truth, not versions." "I understand."